Well, French polishing seems to confuse a lot of people. Finishing can be broken down into 4 stages. Firstly, the wood. You can't get a great finish on a not so great surface, so be sure that the timber is well sanded, smooth. Any holes or cracks that you've got should be filled. Hopefully there are none, but occasionally there are. So the surface of the wood has to be absolutely perfect. Second comes grain filling, which we looked at last time. The hardwood such as rosewood must have their grain filled. We did that. After grain filling, you can give any areas that have been grain filled a brush coat of shellac, just the one, and that needs to be steel wooled down before we start the process of French polishing. French polishing then can be broken down into 2 stages. One, the bodying, which is what we're going to be doing now. That is to put a sufficient amount of body on the wood to protect it and to last for years. And lastly is the finishing, which is the spiriting off, which is probably the most difficult part of it, but we'll look at that in the next video. So, excuse me, we come to the art of French polishing. First is the rubber, which is that. It's the only tool we have, so you best take good care of it. The wadding on the inside is raw cotton wool. This one's obviously quite old now, but nevertheless, it needs to be formed into a point, such as that, like so. The cloth on the outside needs to be extremely well worn cotton. An old bed sheet that's been washed 100 times is perfect for this. In order to fold it, we need to keep our point and start folding it from the point all the way back, like so, making sure that we have our point, and that's the rubber. Take good care of it. As I say, it's the only tool we've got, and we need to treat it with the respect it deserves. Old rubbers are better than new, let that be said. So if you're working with a new rubber, it would pay you to work it in on some offcuts of timber first, before you set about polishing the guitar. The new rubber is inevitably too absorbent, and therefore releases too much polish, which will cause us trouble. So an old rubber's better than new. Then we've got to charge the rubber. In this instance I'm using blonde shellac. There are those that like to unwrap the rubber and squirt a few drops of polish in there. I don't do it that way. I dip the rubber in the polish. I learnt this art from a man called Les Threadgold many years ago, back in the early 70s. Les had been French polishing all of his life. He learnt the trade in the early part of the last century, and was a master craftsman, so I was very lucky. So we dip it in the polish. We let it stop running, like so. I'm going to move it away from the guitar, and then we squeeze it relatively tightly, like so, until it stops running. There you go. It stopped running. It's now charged and ready to go. So we'll put that down. Just dry my glove off a bit. Put the lid back on our polish. Incidentally, I get all my polishes. This is blonde shellac. I also use orange, and I get them both from Southern Tonewoods, which has some fantastic shellac. It's really excellent quality and a very good place to start. So now we come to the French polishing. So our rubber with our point, that's important. The point is necessary to get into these difficult areas, like next to the heel and eventually next to the fretboard on the top. So we do need the point. It's been well charged. This is the bodying process. This guitar's already had a couple of coats. It gets 8 bodying coats in all. So to do the sides, we start off by getting into the heel, like so, and then working away from it, like so. Come back up the other side, like so, down the center, back again, and then we do the heel, like so. This is the only polishing the heel gets, so don't forget to do it. Now we pick it up where we left it off, keep on going round. So we're going straight along with the grain at the moment. We need to alter the direction that we're rubbing in order to keep the finish flat. If you constantly go in the same direction every time, you won't keep it flat, because you'll always put a little bit more polish on here than you do there, and it'll end up looking like the Himalaya mountain range. So there we go, we do the heel again. Now we're going to come back again, excuse me, going across the grain. So we came this way going with the grain, we're going back across the grain. So there are two completely different directions, which will have a tendency to keep the finish flat. In fact, going across the grain is of more use to us than going with it as far as flattening is concerned. However, we need to do both directions in order not to make the finish inconsistent. So we do the heel again. Now we'll do the neck. So we'll put the guitar down and do the neck. Now with the neck it's the same process. So we're going to polish straight up and down the grain like so. Over the head, up the side of the head like so, and then across the grain. So it's much the same as the sides, with the grain and across the grain. And we'll keep the polish nice and flat that way and won't have too many problems. We're not particularly interested in what it looks like at the moment. It's not supposed to be super shiny, although it is getting a bit of a gloss. Let's not forget the end of the head, like so, like that. We flip the guitar back over and we'll probably find that we've got a bit of spill out on the front of the head. We'll clean that off, and now we do the bridge. Let's not forget the bridge. The bridge has to be polished. So just over the bridge once, like that. Another reason why we need this keen point is getting right in there next to the tie block and the saddle block. You go over the bridge once and once only. That's all that's necessary. Up the side of it there, over the top of the tie block, in the trench there, and down the front, and put it down. That's done, and we only need to do it once, but we just have to remember to do it. Now back to the sides again. So again, with the point, we get it in there right up next to the heel. Work away with it, we're going with the grain. Like so. Do the heel. Just don't forget to do the heel. And then continue on. Like so. Now we're only going to go over the sides a couple of times, as this is simply a demonstration. We don't want to spend too much time doing it, like so, in that cutaway. Usually we wouldn't have a cutaway, but in this instance we do. So, and the heel. Then we're going to go back across the grain, just as we did before. And we're not worried about the surface. It's not meant to look finished. It's not meant to be super shiny. We do just want to be careful that we're not leaving swirl marks in the side or tearing it. Tears occur when the rubber is too wet and it becomes sticky, and rather than putting polish on, you end up catching the surface and pulling it off. So there, a little bit of linseed oil will prevent it from tearing. Now we do the neck once more. Just as we did last time, straight up and down the grain, over the head, side, across the grain, and let's not forget the end of the head again, like so. Make sure we don't have any spillage. We do actually have a bit of spillage down there, so wipe it off, because if you don't, it'll constantly build up and it'll become difficult to get rid of. And let's not forget our bridge. Again, just once. You can see I've given this guitar 2 coats and the bridge is looking almost finished, so you don't need to persevere with it. If you sit there and polish the bridge on its own for 5 or 10 minutes, you will tear it, believe me. It's too small an item to do that with. Okay, so when we finish the sides, we remember we polish the sides and neck for about 20 minutes, and we must finish going straight with the grain. We'll continue to do that until we have any swirl marks that may be in the surface well and truly out. Hopefully there are none, but occasionally there are. Swirl marks are caused basically by creases in the underside of the rubber, which if you're noticing you're getting swirl marks, have a look at your rubber. You've probably got a crease in the cotton. You need to move it. So now we're going to do the top. Again, it'll be done for 20 minutes. Now with the top, because we're worried about colour, in this one I've started with a couple of coats of orange shellac, and then I'm going to continue with blonde if I'm satisfied with the colour. So you would normally recharge the rubber again before you start the top. In this instance I'm not going to, because we've only done the sides a couple of times. There's no need to. Usually there wouldn't be a cutaway here, which in fact makes life considerably easier, but we'll put up with it. So I'm going anti-clockwise along the grain, like so, anti-clockwise. Flip around and I continue to go anti-clockwise to do the other side of the top, like so. This is where the point's handy. The point will get right in there next to the fretboard. So anti-clockwise along the grain, and then we would do the head. Let's not forget the head. Now I'm going to go anti-clockwise across the grain, like so. You need to mix these directions up if you want an even colour. Got to get in there where that cutaway is. More trouble than it's worth, but there you are. Get in there, and then we'll do the head again. I know it's difficult to see, but that's what we're going to do. Now we're going to go clockwise with the grain. So there's the third direction. There's a complete difference between polishing clockwise and anti-clockwise. There are 2 separate directions, whether you think they are or not. You can mark my words that they are. So again, still clockwise with the grain, like so. And let's not forget the head. Now we're going to go clockwise across the grain. So we've gone anti-clockwise with the grain, anti-clockwise across the grain, clockwise with the grain, and now clockwise across the grain. So there are 4 completely different directions which will, in fact, keep the top evenly coloured. The sound hole, let's not forget it. Go across the edge just to make sure there's no spillage. You can do, excuse me, the edge of the fretboard if you wish, with the point of the rubber. You can now do inside the head, like so, running the rubber in like that. and finish off by doing the front of the head. Let's not forget our bridge. So again, we pick the bridge up, we polish it once, and once only, and put it back down, and you'll find the bridge will take care of itself very quickly. Almost looks finished now, it in fact isn't, but it looks it, and we put it back down again. Now it's getting a bit sticky because I've been using the rubber on the sides for a bit. Raw linseed oil is the stuff that I always use. Whoops, we don't want too much of it, but nevertheless. Okay, so we spread a few drops of linseed oil around, and then we just, with our rubber, spread it over the top so we've got an even spill of it. Remember, it's raw linseed oil. I'll put a little bit on the head because the whole thing's getting a little sticky now. You will hear or read, no doubt, over a period of time how raw linseed oil, you should never use it for one reason or another, but these objections simply cannot be taken seriously. Polishers have been using it since they invented the stuff. So we're going anti-clockwise with the grain. The oil lets the rubber slip when it becomes sticky. That's when the damage will occur. You will leave swirls in the surface and you may well tear the finish. Anti-clockwise across the grain. Forget our little cutaway, which I say is a lot more trouble than it's actually worth, but there you are. And we do our head again. Now we're going to go clockwise with the grain. Remember, we need 4 directions, as we've been through already, and then finish by going straight up and down the grain. Make sure you're removing any swirl marks that may be in the surface. Hopefully there are none, but nevertheless always remember to do it because there's often the odd one. And then we're ready to turn over and do the back. So with the top, you will polish as we were doing there for 20 minutes like you did the sides, and then you would recharge the rubber. You can turn it over immediately to polish the back. Now with the back, because we don't have a problem with colour so much as we do on the top, I actually only go in 3 directions, which I will explain. So I started there clockwise, I'm going to go back anti-clockwise, like so. And then I'm going to go either clockwise or anti-clockwise, it doesn't matter, straight up the grain, like so. Again, a few drops of raw linseed oil will help if the rubber's getting a little bit sticky. It isn't at the moment because we use some on the top, which is still evident on the rubber. You then might do on the inside of the head, like so. Remember when we were doing the top, we did the inside of the head from the other side, and you need to do the inside of the head from the back side as we're doing the back. So once again, we'll go anti-clockwise across the grain. These directions are necessary to keep the surface flat. That's all we're interested in, keeping the surface flat and as mark-free as possible. We'll then do it again clockwise across the grain. Like so. Just never forget the little heel cap. And then either clockwise or anti-clockwise, straight up and down the grain. And you'll continue this for 20 minutes until the job is done. Occasionally go around the edge of the sides, like so, just to make sure there is no spillage. If you feel yourself scrub the rubber on the edge, take your finger and clean it off, because you will cause a run down the side. That's important. Remember to go inside the back of the head again, so as that's getting polished. And you may do the bridge. If you've done the bridge every time with the sides and the top, there's possibly no need to do the bridge more than maybe 3 or 4 times during the 20-minute period at the back. When you've done your 20 minutes, remember to finish straight up and down the grain to remove any swirl marks that you may have in the surface. Again, if you're getting swirl marks, have a look at the underside of the rubber. It probably means you've got a crease in it, and that's what's causing the swirl marks. Remember, the rubber should never be too wet. When you wring it out thoroughly, and that will do your 20 minutes. So after doing that, we can now clean the rubber out with a little bit of spirits, just to keep it fresh. So it's 20 minutes on the top and neck, sides and neck, 20 minutes on the top, 20 minutes on the back. You would do that for 3 days, then it's left for 3 days to dry properly and sink. It would be cut back with 000 steel wool, and then you do it for 3 days again. Again, it's left for 3 days, cut back with 000 steel wool, and polished again for a further 2 days. So it will have 8 body coats, exactly as we've been doing it now. After those 8 body coats, we're ready for finishing, and we'll talk about that in the next video. But we will just clean this rubber. So, a few drops of spirits, make sure we don't spill them on the guitar. Oh, that's miles. We put the rubber in there, it'll soak that up reasonably quickly. I actually put a bit too much in, but you can see it's disappearing very quickly. Like so. And then after that, you would wring it out pretty well, like so, before you put it away. If you forget to do that once or twice, it's not going to hurt, but if you never clean it out, eventually the rubber will become clogged and will have to be washed out thoroughly. So try and remember to do that. That'll keep it fresh until the next time we need it, which in this instance will be tomorrow when I do the next bodying coat.